upload it to YouTube, but it's 4 in the morning right now, and I don't really care, so filling in this extra space right here before I start recording, and hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the producer from the letter live, or the letter from the producer live. Can't even speak English at 4 a.m. Part 42. This was the Eureka live letter, as we like to call it. It had a bunch of Q&A stuff that's not Eureka related, and we're going to go through that real quick before we go into Eureka. So it's 4 in the morning. Let's just get started. So there was a bunch of questions regarding job adjustments to get started. And there's not really too much to say. He apologized, by the way, for the day one issues with the server, which, everyone was saying, Raubon is now Sid Extreme, or Sid Savage is the new Raubon, or Pippin Extreme and stuff like that. So he apologized for that. He's apologized for it before, and they're going to be making sure they QA that a lot better going forward. As for job adjustments, they started talking a little bit about tanks at first, asking if, Warriors and Dark Knights are going to get increases in their support abilities and DPS. I don't know who's asking for more Warrior DPS right now. Warriors are very strong. Yeah, that's a correct identity for that one right there. As for Dark Knight in particular, they saw that basically people were asking Dark Passenger and Shadow Wall, Shadow Wall's cooldown is too high, or, Dark Passenger's MP costs are too high. And they said that they've been seeing a lot more requests for Dark Knight changes, and they don't want to simply reduce recast timers because content's balanced around the recast timers of the different buffs. So they're going to discuss how they want to do Dark Knight. So it seems like there will be something Dark Knight related in the future. They just want to wait a little bit longer. My air just came on and scared the crap out of me. Moving on. Dark Knight looks like they'll get some buffs at some point going forward, but we don't know what yet. Then somebody asked about direct hit on accessories. Direct hit's not even like the big thing that people are talking about anymore for tanks. I think Paladin still uses it. Dark Knight can use it, or they can go with crit, and Warriors are completely ignoring direct hit on accessories. Plans to adjust the stats on accessories in the future. I think this question really should have been more geared towards crafted accessories versus raid accessories, because he seems to say here that they're trying to get these accessories out to push their DPS to clear the raid content a little bit faster. Once they attain Savage accessories, we don't think they will need that much DPS. That almost implies that he knows that the crafted accessories are higher DPS than the Savage accessories. And they might make adjustments to direct hit to make it not work on tanks. They don't really know what they're going to do with it yet. That's all we've gotten. I think the question really should be crafted versus raid instead of direct hit melds versus everything else. That's just my own little take on that one right there. Do they plan to buff Samurai and Red Mage? No plans for Red Mage, but Samurai looks like they're going to be getting buffs. They're thinking of making adjustments, and I quote, that will push their DPS to match their job concept. In the unofficial translation, he straight up said that monks were stronger than samurais. So I think that as much as I like being a strong monk, I think that's, you can't have it that way. You can't have samurais not being stronger than the job that used to do what samurais are trying to do now, except that samurais not doing it even as well as monks did back then. Black Mage, they're asking for more raid utility. They said, if you want raid utility, we gotta nerf the damage. I've heard some Black Mages saying they're doing pretty well this patch once they've learned the fights and the positioning, which has always been a problem for Black Mages, but I don't know. I don't know how they're actually doing. I only know from the few Black Mages I've spoken to. I've seen mostly Red Mages and Summoners again, so can't really say too much. Do you have a plan that adds a system that would allow gear converted to glamour to be used using the previous glamour without the use of a plate? They said yes, they're developing a system that allow you to glamour directly using the items stored inside the dresser, meaning not using the glamour plates themselves. Currently receiving a lot of calls saying they've converted the wrong gear. Converted gear aren't gone completely. They can still be used as a glamour. And then people, may want to just the point in how it cannot be used as normal gear. However, there's still the issue of inventory size, and they haven't decided yet. Basically, still a bunch of technical things behind the scenes with the glamour dresser they haven't decided on or 100% worked out yet. As for the number of items in the glamour dresser, this will increase the amount of data passed through the network, but they're discussing. They know people want it. They know people want to increase the amount of plates. They know that maybe they have to choose one or the other, more plates or more items. So they're looking at all the details to see what the next step will be for the glamour dresser. I think there's another question regarding it later. This one's about the fashion report. Can you get a high score with low level gear? I think he just says you're new players, so you'll get what you get as a low-level player. When will fishers receive a new secondary tool? Fishers are set up in a special way. We haven't added any attributes to their secondary tool. We haven't included this as part of their balancing. So why they have GP, the durability of their gear will drop when they fish. So to compensate for this, we have added the GP. Okay. Would it be possible to add optional items to the Armoire or Calamity Salvager? Mostly meaning items from the Mog Station, real money items. It says Calamity Salvagers actually check achievements, so for the Salvager, no. But they want to add them to the Armoire, so that's what they're going to work on for Mog Station items. Die information is lost when storing in the Armoire. They just said that they don't have additional space for die information. That's just the way it is. There's a whole huge explanation about it on Reddit, I think a week ago, from a data standpoint, which was very interesting to read. They're asking about cutscenes for Casterman Praetorium. Are there any other dungeons that are scheduled to be adjusted? But there's no other dungeons that work like those. And they said that they are probably going to enhance the rewards. Or no, that they are going to enhance the rewards for those two dungeons. So main scenario roulette, going to get bumped up even more. Jade So Extreme, the tank LB3 strat. Did the dev team plan for this? They said no, but they're also not planning on nerfing it. They said that it's very similar to other strategies where players came up with a strategy and it worked, and they don't want to remove it just because the players came up with it, unless it's inhibiting, like the Titan tanking Ramu strategy, which was inhibiting party compositions where tanks couldn't get parties. Just make sure that everyone's on the same page about using it. Also, funny note with this one right here. There's a rumor where people believe warriors playing on an SSD have an advantage inside Omega Sigmascape V1 Savage. This is referring, I don't think he realizes it, this is referring to the popular strategy now where a warrior goes into a single tank ghost, inner releases, kills it in like 2 or 3 GCDs, and then nobody else has to do the ghost mechanic. I don't think he realizes that when he's answering this question, which is why people say warriors should have an SSD to load into the ghost. To answer that question, though, apparently, even if you have an SSD, it doesn't speed up the load time of going into the ghost. He said the load time is adjusted so it's loaded the same. It's just your timing on actually getting into the ghost. So keep that in mind, I guess, if your warrior says that their hard drive's too slow. How do you feel about the current progression of Sigmascape? It's getting cleared a little bit slower. Some may feel that the progression is slower, but it's only the second week, so don't rush it and enjoy it. Characters really stood out in a Not to Beast Tribe. When will we get the next Beast Tribe series? Will we see the Namazu or the Lupin? And actually, the next Beast Tribe will be Disciple of Hand or Land. Oh, Disciple of Hand and Land specific. So hard confirmation. Next Beast Tribe is Crafter and Gatherers. And on top of that, popular characters will be involved. And they believe it will be exciting. Characters from the main story, it's going to be a big thing. A lot of us are under the impression it's very likely going to be rebuilding the Dolmen Enclave, which sounds like an exciting prospect to me. For Triple Triad, they're considering lifting limitations or making adjustments to deck setups, so please look forward to that. Number of minions is increased, so could we make it easier to search for them, making tabs for each type, and they'll talk to the UI team. If you have any suggestions, leave some feedback on the forums. Large-scale fates, no plans to adjust rewards, plans to adjust their strength. Let's see. The Crafterer. I love Crafterers. So when can we exchange 99 totems for Susano and Lakshmi Extreme Doggos? 4.25. He has instructed the team to do this by 4.25. Do you have any plans to introduce mounts for 4 to 8 players? Car, Regalia, Final Fantasy 15 collaboration. May implement them sometime in the future. Do you have plans to expand the stats on Chocobo companions? I don't know why anyone even wants this, because who cares anymore? They said, please wait if you want more adjustments and additions to it. I think that's his fancy way of saying forget about it. Just don't ask again, and we probably won't work on it because, I don't know, I don't care. Whatever. Just personal note, don't care. What's it called? Blah, blah, blah. It's starting to become difficult to find new emotes. They'll have the UI team look at making it easier to find emotes. Status of the mobile app, patch 4.3 is currently what it's aimed for. It's like the 8th time I've heard that, but all right. And it's tied to it's tied in game using a large scale server, so they want to make sure they don't screw it up. When I guess I could try hitting refresh and see if okay, Eureka details aren't here yet. We'll go to the unofficial translation that was done via the Reddit team when we get to that part. But let's do the rest of the Q&A first. Octopus, there's a shortage of octopus in the game to make takoyaki. Takoyaki's become a very a very sought after food for I guess for raiding in the game. And unfortunately, the octopus that's used to make it is incredibly rare. So much so that on some servers, the takoyaki is worth well over 100k per food. And as such, they're going to be adding more octopus to the game so that the recipe is a little bit easier to complete. Seems like a stupid question until you actually ask about takoyaki as a food in the game. Mannequins as furnishings. This is something that got asked about years and years ago. Basically, a mannequin allows you to put armor onto the mannequin and display the armor. So basically, all of your gear, instead of just being either glamour or functional, you can now also use it to decorate your house or decorate a room with mannequins. So they're working on it, which is good to hear because I've wanted that for years. Do you have any plans for Alpha merchandise? Alpha being the Chocobo from Omega. They have some plans, but please look forward to it. Would it be possible to load locations from old content to use with group pose? They said no, but they may make it so you can grab locations that you were only able to visit a single time. Would it be possible to play old Final Fantasy games from the toy box in your in-room? Systematically, it's not impossible. It's more of a rights-related thing, but he's going to look into it. That would be insane. Imagine if you could just play the old NES and SNES games in the toy box in Final Fantasy XIV. You'd probably have to buy them off the Mog Station. Like, let's be real. You'd have to buy them again. They wouldn't just give them to you for free. Or for your sub fee, I guess. Personally, I'd like to do something with titles like Return to Ivalice. I'm sure it means Final Fantasy Tactics, which are hard to play on current systems. In the past, you mentioned to make... Okay, so the next few questions are for Soken. So I'd recommend that if you're interested in, I guess, Soken's work in particular, he is the head composer for Final Fantasy XIV. He's worked on hundreds of tracks for the games. Most of the Primal songs go through him. In fact, all the Primal songs, I'm pretty sure, go through him, at least in some way. As you can see here with lyrics for Jade Stoa, Soken, Koji Fox, and Shirasugi worked together to make this song. And then Oda worked on the Japanese lyrics, Koji wrote the English lyrics, and the Japanese lyrics, well, yeah, lore team for Oda. There you go. So, yeah, and then he's got, how he got the sounds for certain instruments, and, how is it to work on the Final Fantasy VI songs for Sigmascape, and Not Beast Tribe quest. One of his colleagues actually made the Not Beast Tribe quest, and the whistle for the Phantom Train, and when are we getting the Stormblood soundtrack? He said maybe by summer. It won't fit on one disc. They really want to make it fit on one disc, so they're trying to make it fit on one disc. They're re-releasing some sheet music, so if you're a piano player or you want to use it for the perform feature, there's going to be they're actually old music sheets that they're re-releasing, so be sure to keep an eye out for those. What's it called? Do you have any plans to add hard rock songs similar to Metal from Alexander? And I said, yeah, it depends on the type of game. It depends on the type of fight in the game. So if there's a fight that calls for it, sure. What are his musical roots? His parents created music, but he actually went to school for chemistry, is what we learned. So he got most of his musical, I guess, enthusiasm from his family, from his parents. Then someone thanked him for changing the music to the Altoroid. Apparently, the only reason Altoroid had basic mount music is because nobody requested it to have different mount music. So now with all the requests, he updated it. Orchestra Concert. So very first CD, the Primals are going to be getting a CD release, a dedicated one. You can already get them like with other soundtracks, like it's included, but they're actually getting volume 1 of the Primals with some new songs. They're going to do a ZEP tour throughout Japan. There's going to be a Korean tour, and then the orchestra itself is actually going to be coming to NA and EU, Los Angeles, and I don't remember the EU location. Yeah, concert will be held in Los Angeles, California, and Dortmund, Germany. There you go. Los Angeles, will be performing at the Dolby Theater, known for hosting the Academy Awards. Whew, excuse me. I gotta burp or something. So anyway, it looks like the Eureka stuff is still being added. So for your viewing pleasure, we have the unofficial translation, which is a little off center here. So let me fix that real quick. So thank you again to Illuna for the translations, the unofficial translations over on the Reddit Discord. We've been live streaming those for the last few live letters so that people can enjoy them live while also watching the live letter in Japanese. And also Hezkezel for the images. He takes screen caps while we're in the middle of the translation. So for stuff like the PowerPoint slides, super handy. Thank you guys for your hard work, especially at these ungodly hours. Although I know Illuna's in Japan. So for them, it's not that ungodly of an hour. lucky them. So anyway, Forbidden Land of Eureka. This has been the big thing that people have been waiting for, and I will be doing a separate video on my overall thoughts on this when it's not 4 in the morning. But let's just go over the details that have been hard confirmed. A lot of this is taking information we've gotten over the last several months and I guess giving it a face. That's the big way to look at it. So Forbidden Land of Eureka is all about enhancing the gear and the weapons and leveling up your character's elemental level. It's a single, so every single time more than 144 people are participating in the content, it creates a new instance for Eureka, very similar to the way the Diadem created new instances. 144 people can occupy a single instance at a given time. On top of that, you can queue in solo and make parties once you're already in there. You can make a party before you go in of, like 4 to 8 people, depending on how many people you actually want to pursue the content with. And, you're free to treat it kind of like an open world area. You can't really because it's got a 3-hour time limit, but you can just queue in immediately again. Basically, there's no real limit on it. It's just because it's an instance, technically, it has the time limit to it. It's that it's like a 3-hour time limit. So with that out the way, that's the most basic thing. You're probably wondering what the hell that is. So that is the Magia board, which is where you'll use your elemental levels. Basically, as you kill enemies in Eureka, your character will gain elemental levels. And it's the equivalent of just leveling up, like you would normally throughout the game. And you can assign elemental levels to different elements in order to give yourself advantages over the enemies that you're actually fighting. The maximum elemental level is 20. And by the way, if you're elemental level 6 or over and you die without getting a resurrection within 10 minutes, you will actually lose elemental experience points. If you're level 11 or over, you can actually lose levels. So it's basically Final Fantasy 11 in Final Fantasy 14. I can't think of a better way to put it. But you can see the different elementals all the way on the left-hand side. You have basically advantages offensively and advantages defensively, depending on what kind of enemies you're going up against. So you can see that here, measure, endure, harness the elements, and start at level 1, maximum level is 20. And you go forward, and then here you go. Keep in mind when you exit Eureka, you keep all your progress. You don't lose progress when you leave after the 3 hours, so it's all permanent progress. Elemental level of 20 is only temporary. As the content expands, the level cap will increase. So as new zones get added, expect to have to gain even more elemental levels going up. When there will be other adjustments to it or additions to it, who the hell knows? Elemental EXP, we already said that. Basically, when you're fighting enemies, you can fight them solo, you can fight them in a party, but if you're fighting harder enemies, you're probably going to want to be in a party. And if you're in a party, you'll probably want to fight harder enemies. So it goes hand in hand. Probably don't want to be taking on enemies weaker than you when you're in a party, unless you just want to mow them down, I suppose. So with the Elemental EXP, that's when you go into the Magia board. You can see there's 5 levels to each element. And as you add points to each element, you gain percentages of damage over and reduced damage taken. So every enemy, basically, let me see if there's a screenshot for it here. Yeah, so every enemy you can see has an elemental affinity next to it and an elemental level, which does play an important role. It's not just about the elemental affinity. And you can also see that outside of the Magia board itself, you have this board right here, which basically acts as Magicite. This is basically a visual representation of where your current elemental levels are being attributed and what advantages or disadvantages they would give to you. So, for example, this enemy right here is water aspected. So, attack-wise, you'd want to have points in Lightning Elemental, like any old school RPG. And also, if you have points in the Water Elemental, which is the same as the enemy, then you would have higher defense against them. So against an enemy like this, you'd want points in both Lightning as offense and points in Water for defense. And it actually will display to you when you have an advantage or a disadvantage against an enemy, or if you should possibly respec your different elementals. One thing you'll notice is that there's a number in the middle. It says MA4. That's your Magicite Counter. Your Magicite Counter seems to have a maximum of 5, and it basically allows you to spin the board manually. You get to choose, how you want to spin it. And you use one Magicite to spin the board to whatever you want it to be. And you can use that to adjust it to the different enemies you're fighting out in the world. So if you're fighting this enemy that's the water-based, but then all of a sudden you want to fight an enemy that's earth-based, you probably want to spin the board to try and get different elemental alignments in order to make sure that you aren't fighting at a major disadvantage. And it plays a really, really big role in how much damage you take and how much damage you actually deal. So you're going to have to get used to adjusting what elements you're using. And as you gain more elemental levels, obviously, you have more points on the grid, which makes it easier to, I guess, fight multiple different types of enemies at a given time, but you still got to play it a little bit safe because it doesn't look like you'll be able to fill the whole grid. It looks like you're only able to fill a few of the elements all the way, with 20 being the maximum level. I suppose that kind of just makes sense. Then they reiterate here, when you die, you lose experience points. If you're level 11 or higher, you can also lose a level, in which case you just have to go kill enemies to regain the elemental level. And reminder, like level 70 doesn't matter. You won't go down to level 69. It's only your elemental level that can go up and down while you're inside of Eureka, the Forbidden Land. In case anyone's wondering about item level in Eureka, I'm pretty sure when he queued in, it had an item level of like 300 or something. I need a confirmation of that. Hopefully the official translation has something. But your armor is not what matters in there. Your elemental level and its affinities are what matters in there. So as long as you have, I guess, that minimum question mark, then you'll be okay. So the entrance is in Kugane. It's going to be over at the docks. There's going to be an NPC that will take you to Eureka. I'm assuming that's where the normal one will be. It's also worth mentioning there's a lock picker in the background there. I'm wondering if it has lock boxes like Diadem as well, because that's the first thing I noticed when I saw that picture. By the way, yes, the NPC looks like Thancred. It's not Thancred. All right, he just looks like Thancred. So yeah, he queues in. When you're in there killing enemies, there's things like chain bonuses and trying to maintain your elemental affinities and stuff like that. So going forward, you go in, you got the 3-hour instance. There you go. He's got 5 points on his grid, 3 and 2. He's got the 3-hour time limit. There's some NPCs you can see in there. There's Geralt, there's Kryl, there's a few other NPCs you can see as well. There is going to be a story to Eureka itself. If you've watched the 4.2 trailer, you notice there's a section with Kryl and Eureka. It seems that we're going to be exploring the origins of the Dawn Warriors from Final Fantasy V in Eureka, whereas you can see Galuf Baldessian and the other members of the Dawn Warriors from Final Fantasy V in the 4.2 trailer, mixed in with some of Kryl's speech. So we may also be learning a little bit about what happened to the Isle of Val, which is something that's been a big mystery since the 2.x days. Even with Kryl's return in the 3.x days, we've gotten very little information about it. So that's going to be something else to keep in mind. There's also items you can purchase, medicines and dark matters and whatnot. So worth keeping that in mind. Like I said, Geralt's going to be there. You are going to be able to work on weapons and gear that you will be able to take out of Eureka. And you're going to see some of you Final Fantasy XI players out there are going to recognize a piece we're going to see later. Looking at the map, you can see there's a bunch of new places. That's what the entire map looks like. You can see there's even some unexplored areas over here to the east where there's the Aetheryte that's unexplored. Worth mentioning a few other things. One, you cannot fly. In fact, you cannot mount inside of Eureka, the Forbidden Land. Now, it specifically says until you're done with Expedition. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that when the next Eureka area comes out, they'll add it to this one. Because if you look in the top right, there's no real objective. It just tells you you're in Eureka, the Forbidden Land. Maybe it means once you've explored the whole map, you can start mounting. Like once you've already seen the entire zone, kind of like Air Currents, but not really, maybe then. So I'm going to wait for the official translation. We'll just take that with a grain of salt. Unofficial translation, always take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, that's what the current map is looking like. Let's see. In the area, the New Void is going to be an interesting one. Again, very likely a play to the Isle of Val. So he goes out into the area to find some enemies to show how spinning the board works. You can see that when he targets an enemy with a water elemental, it tells him on his grid, on his UI, that he will have an offensive bonus if he has points in elemental. That's what the sword means. That means he'll deal more damage if he has points in the lightning elemental. And it means he'll have a defensive bonus, the shield here, if he has points in water. So as you target different enemies, it'll display these different advantages and that you can have by having the right elements equipped. So, and again, like I said, you can spin the board, which is kind of hard to show in a screenshot. You can see like it's blurred, but he's basically spinning the points at the cost of Magicite. And it's not one Magicite per spin, it's one Magicite per change. So you can spin it until you get it exactly the way you want it, and then use it, and then that's one Magicite. Magicite itself comes back over time. And I think you also get it if you go and respec. I think it also gives you a full free Magicite use, which is what it looked like when he went back and respec'd a little bit later on. So then he goes forward. Yeah, it has a cost of the Magicite. Yeah, because then he came back here and he respec'd. This is what his default looks like before he spins it. And you can see the percentages, by the way. 2 points in, what is that? I'm bad with the icons here. I think that's wind. No, that's earth. That's earth. That's wind. I'm dumb. So he's got 2 points in earth, and he's got 52% damage dealt and 52% less damage taken, most likely. Also with lightning, he's got 72% at 3. So it looks like the first 2 points scale really well, and the next 3 points don't scale as hard. I guess to at least make sure that if you have a couple of points in it, you're at least generating some sort of realistic advantage. So it's going to be all about balancing that and figuring out what enemies you're going out there to fight and what elements you need to have an advantage of, especially early on with the different elemental levels that you actually have. And all the different enemies. Every enemy has a different elemental level. Keep in mind your actual elemental level, not just these elemental stats, also play a role in how much damage you deal and how much damage you take. We see that later when he goes to fight an enemy that has an elemental level of 10, and it murders him. When I say murders, I don't just mean a light murdering. As you can see in the unofficial translation, he's on a dev build. He's got God mode, and that was on purpose. It was hitting him for 60k per auto attack. And you could be like, oh, he's a black mage, not a tank, but he's elemental level 1 versus 10, and he's taking 60k in auto. Even with a full elemental build at that point, it would only reduce it down to 30k. It says 50k, but it was like between 50 and 60. That would still only reduce it down to like 25, 30k damage a hit. And so his elemental level being closer to the elemental level of the enemy is also going to play a major role. So that's going to be a big thing that you want to make sure you're being careful with. If you're fighting enemies that are way higher level than you, make sure that A, your elemental levels are aligned properly, and B, that your party is ready for enemies that are going to hit you massively hard. So if you've done the later floors of Palace of the Dead, you're probably already used to that a little bit. So, going on to gear and weapons. So, as you're exploring Eureka, you can obtain something called protein crystals. We're all going to call them protein crystals because it's all about them gains. These crystals can be used to obtain and enhance, keyword, armor and weapons in Eureka with the aid of Geralt. To fully upgrade a Eureka weapon, you are going to need a specific item from a specific boss somewhere in Eureka. So, aiming to get the right items and working together with teammates to find and kill notorious monsters for the different upgrades is going to be vital. So working together with your fellow man and woman, I guess, just for consistency's sake, is going to be key here. So don't just try to go it all solo and be that guy who's all off on your own. Try to work together with some other people from time to time. And reminder that unlike, since we've been comparing a lot of it to Final Fantasy XI, it's not a claim system. Everyone can fight an enemy and obtain rewards from it. So it's another thing that's worth mentioning when it comes to the notorious monsters in particular. You can also search for party while you're in there. A few things to remember. You're going to be able to get dyed versions of the antiquated gear. You can see that's the banana yellow mage for red mage. If I'm not mistaken, that is the antiquated item level 290 gear that's been dyed. And that's also a glowy weapon. Ooh. And also you see blue mage confirmed. So there's another one. And you can also see, it looks like the actual color of the weapon, the aura around the weapon, or the color of the weapon itself has also been adjusted. You can see it looks kind of more bluish here, I guess, bluish or purplish, and here it's like darker, I guess like a red or something. So yeah, keep that in mind. We went back to this one, and then this is the boss from the trailer. If you haven't seen the 4.2 trailer, this boss was in it as well. And then they showed off some of the other rewards from Eureka, the Forbidden Land. Yes, Final Fantasy XI players, that is a male Mikote wearing the Final Fantasy XI Scorpion harness and the Final Fantasy XI Strider boots. So Circuit and Simurf, both from, yeah, just worth mentioning. And that's coming out with 4.25, which doesn't have an official release date. It's either going to be February 28th or March 6th. My money is on March 6th. I'd be really surprised to see it anytime after March 6th. So that is worth mentioning. They showed the protection mapping video during all that, and then all the rest of the unofficial translation is just the stuff we already went over with Sulkin and whatnot. The official translation still doesn't have Eureka stuff, so I'm going to keep an eye on that as the day goes on. And I'll probably do a separate video about comparing Eureka to a lot of Final Fantasy XI stuff, since it is getting a lot of comparisons there. So anyway, that's the live letter that came from live letter 42. Next live letter, probably sometime in April, if I had to imagine. I think April 14th is their next live Fate event. So I would imagine that's when the next live letter is going to be, but I don't think there was any hard confirmation on that. I was hoping to get one at PAX East, but no mention. No mention. Feels bad, man. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this video. I'm going to hang out with the Twitch chat for a little bit, and then I'm going to go get some rest before I live stream for the day, because I got Final Fantasy 14 and Monster Hunter to do today. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching over on YouTube, Twitch. We're going to hang out for a few more minutes before I go get some rest. So I will see all of you fine ladies and gentlemen in the next video. Be sure to stay tuned for all the latest with Eureka. And until then, take care. And now there's probably also going to be some time here at the end of the video, because Twitch, I did something at the beginning of the video that sometimes happens at the end of the video as well, where